So we, as part of one of our projects, we conducted a survey asking Muslim travelers whether they researched destinations before traveling to see if they fulfilled their needs as Muslims, and 84% of respondents said that they do. And in that same study, 39% said that their needs as Muslims were not met.
السلام عليكم، حياكم الله في حلقة جديدة من بودكاست يحتمل الخطأ، وهو بودكاست بننقل فيه آراء متخصصين في مجالات الإدارة والأعمال والتسويق. إذا تحبوا هذا النوع من المحتوى اشتركوا في القناة. لطالما ارتبط مصطلح الحلال ترافل أو المسلم فريندلي ترافل، سواء السفر الحلال أو السفر الصديق للمسلمين، بموضوع أداء المناسك. ولكن في الحقيقة الموضوع أعمق من ذلك، وليس بالضرورة حتى مرتبط بالدول المسلمة. فهو مجال كبير ويعني سوق كبير ضخم كما حنشوف إن شاء الله في الحلقة. وينتهج هذا السوق يعني نهج أن صناعة منتجات وخدمات بما يتوافق برغبات وحاجات المستهلكين. لذلك أنا سعيد باستضافة الأخت ريم، وهي متخصصة في دراسة هذا المجال ونموه، اللي هو الحلال ترافل والمسلم فريندلي ترافل، وهي شريك في شركة دينار ستاندرد، وهي أيضا شركة يعني تتخصص في دراسة مجال الاقتصاد أو الاقتصاد الكامل، الاقتصاد الحلال، مما يتضمن أيضا يعني الحلال ترافل، وأيضا مجالات أخرى مثل الفود، الأكل والفاشن والأزياء إلى آخره. فهي هذه الشركة تدرسها وتدرس نموها، وأيضا تقدم استشارات يعني في هذا المجال. فإن شاء الله اليوم بنفند هذا الموضوع ونفهمه ونفهم فائدته لنا، سواء كمسلمين أو حتى كاقتصاديا إن شاء الله. السلام عليكم. Thank you again. Thank you again for being here with us and sharing with us your knowledge, and hopefully we'll be able to shed some lights on this very interesting topic. And I'm glad that we have you here.
Thank you for inviting me, and happy to discuss one of my favorite topics. So I appreciate that.
Definitely. So let's start off by introducing yourself and what you do, and then move on to elaborate a little bit about what is it exactly halal travel.
Sure. So professionally, I am a partner with Dinar Standard, which is a growth strategy consulting firm. We have offices in New York and a branch office in Dubai, and then we have presence globally in all of the main cities and countries over the world. And we specialize in the global halal and ethical economy, and also in innovation and the social impact space. And personally, I lead the firm's travel and tourism sector practice with a special focus on Muslim-friendly travel, but also on the sector as a whole. And I manage client projects related to developing their tourism strategies, as well as delivering training related to developing their tourism, and also developing their, in general, companies' marketing strategies and marketing campaigns. And to give you some examples of work that we do related to tourism or Muslim-friendly tourism. So, for example, we were engaged by the Indonesia Ministry of Tourism for 2 years to promote Indonesia as a Muslim-friendly destination. But it's not only Muslim destinations who engage us. So another example of a client is Marriott here in the US. We provided advisory to them and helped facilitate webinars to their teams in terms of how to deal with Muslim guests that come to visit. And we also delivered training for a newly established DMO, which is a destination management organization in Al-Quds in Palestine. And so these are some examples, and we publish. We are known for our report, The State of the Global Islamic Economy report, which we publish in partnership with Dubai Economy and Tourism. And it covers the different sectors of the halal economy, one of which is halal travel, or sometimes we call it Muslim-friendly travel. So, Muthanna, I know you asked me, what is halal travel? And the answer is really, it's very basic. It's really being able to travel as a Muslim, being able to travel, whether it's to a Muslim country or non-Muslim country, and having your basic needs as a Muslim, as a practicing Muslim, being met. So, for example, if I'm looking to eat at a restaurant, I want to make sure that the food is halal. If I'm at a hotel, I don't want alcohol in my mini fridge, or if they want to send me a special gift, I don't want a bottle of champagne, for example. I want them to understand that as a Muslim, that's not a welcome gift. And then I want to make sure there's a space for me to pray. If, for example, I'm part of a guided tour, for like a full day tour, for example, my needs to have a space to pray and to have an allocated time for me to pray during that tour, for example, that's a requirement. So really, it's very basic. And then, but you can take it up a notch, and if you really want to accommodate Muslim travelers, so and for example, in Turkey, there are many beach resorts that have dedicated beaches for women that are totally secluded, and they have multiple swimming pools that are women only. So this is taking it a step further, and also spas, for example, offering spa services that are separate for women and men. So these are the types of services, and as you can tell, some of them are very basic in terms of destinations, or hotels, for example, don't need to do much to accommodate Muslim customer needs, and then others, if they're really focused on that market and want to target that segment, they can build it into their product offering and add more offerings.
Interesting. Thank you again for this. So I understand. I mean, as a Muslim, I understand why this would be beneficial. But as a service provider, or someone who is going to provide these services or allocate these services, what are the incentives for them to do that?
It's purely economic. It makes absolute economic sense to target the Muslim traveler. And I'll give you some examples from non-Muslim countries that are targeting Muslim travelers. And in the end, it's a segment. It's another segment that you're targeting. So we're not asking destinations or travel companies or hotels to purely convert themselves to be focused on just Muslim travelers. No, we're asking them to consider Muslim travelers as one segment that they need to accommodate, in addition to other segments that they're focusing on. For perhaps they're focusing on the Chinese market, for example, as a segment, or they're focusing on the Western market. So it's another segment that they're targeting as well. And to give you an idea of the need, so we, as part of one of our projects, we conducted a survey asking Muslim travelers whether they researched destinations before traveling to see if they fulfilled their needs as Muslims, and 84% of respondents said that they do. And in that same study, 39% said that their needs as Muslims were not met. Mm-hmm. So just from looking at these results, you can tell that this is an important factor in their decision-making process in determining which destination they would like to travel to, and finding out if it meets their needs as Muslims or not. So it makes economic sense, and I'll share later with you. I can share some of the figures, but to give you some examples of what non-Muslim destinations are doing to attract that travel segment. So, for example, Thailand, and I traveled. I was in Phuket a few years ago, and I saw their malls had Muslim prayer spaces, for example, and several of the restaurants had Halal logo, that it was halal, and they published. They have a Muslim friendly app that you can download on your phone and find restaurants that are halal, find hotels, find different attractions, and also the Ministry of Tourism recently hired a team from one of the universities to develop products that are focused on Muslim travelers, and based on that, they introduced new travel routes specifically focused on Muslims, and then after that, as a follow-up, they provided training on halal tourism to the industry and to different stakeholders. So that's one example. Another example, here in New York, they released a Muslim-friendly travel guide, which was developed by Crescent Rating. Other countries also have guides, like, for example, Muslim-friendly guides. Australia has a visitor guide for Muslim tourists, and I believe also a lot of these guides are available in Arabic, since they're targeting the GCC traveler. In Hong Kong, for example, part of their website is focused on Muslim travelers and where they can find halal food and attractions, and they suggest a full itinerary based on Muslim needs, for example. Recently in the Olympics in Japan, they prepared for all of the Muslim athletes in terms of making sure that halal food was available. They had even mosques on wheels. So that's another example. So a lot, and I know I'm providing a lot of examples in South Asia, and I feel they are really leading. So Taiwan, for example, they one of their hospitals was certified halal, since a lot of Muslims especially from the GCC, they might travel to Taiwan or Thailand or different countries for medical tourism. So they wanted to make sure that their needs as Muslims, in terms of food, in terms of just general awareness of our needs, was met. South Korea. This is the last example, and then I'll end with this. But South Korea hosts every year Halal Restaurant Week, and they aim to attract Muslim travelers, and over 100 restaurants participate in that, and they introduce sites, different tourism sites and experiences, and offer special discounts, and it's a whole event. So these are some examples from non-Muslim countries.
Interesting. Really, really interesting. I'm a little bit surprised with Thailand.
Yeah, you wouldn't think of that, right? And it's the odd thing, the really frustrating, I would say, thing is that a lot of times Muslim countries are not focused at all on this segment, and the response is, well, we're a Muslim country, what do you expect? Kullu halal. But some markets, like for example the Malaysia market, are very particular, and even if they're traveling to a Muslim country, they want to see the assurances, they want to see the halal logo, they want to see the word halal mentioned, and it's funny, like, I'm originally from Egypt, and this segment is not in their radar of tourism planners or tourism companies, and the focus is still on the Western market as as considered the lucrative market, which is not really the case.
I see. I see. I want to just to the last point you mentioned that the halal, certified the Malaysian audience. I want to jump to okay. So it's interesting that people can cater to that, to halal. Is there's any bodies or certify like this certification? How does it go? Is there's a body or that governs the certification? Otherwise, anyone can claim it's halal.
Yeah, absolutely. So each country has their own. If you're talking about food,
Mhm.
each country has their own standardization body, and then they have their certifiers, which provide certifications that are approved by the government. So it's very well regulated. Um, and this is a long story, and my colleagues in the halal food sector can talk to you a lot about how different countries have different regulations, and ideally it should be all unified. It should be one regulation. In terms of tourism specifically, so SMEEK, which is an organization that's part of OIC, or the Organization of Islamic Conference, developed an optional standard for tourism, which hotels, for example, can adopt, and it has different levels. And this standard, it's not yet widely adopted, but something like that, if it's one global standard that's universally understood, that's related to tourism, and you can instantly know, okay, this hotel adopts the standard, so you know what to expect. So this is much needed. It's still not widely adopted in travel as a whole, maybe just in food.
Yeah, I think it's harder. I don't know if I'll be. I think it's harder when it comes to, like, in food. It's a clear cut somehow, so
Yes,
it's
yes.
easier to. But someone has to really go to these hotels, to these tours, and try all the routes to figure out. It's a little bit complicated. I understand why it's still not widely.
And yeah, and halal means different things to different people. So someone coming from the West, for example, uh, they might be very happy to just find some halal food options, um, for for the hotel room not to have alcohol in the mini fridge, for example, and that for them would be considered, Muslim friendly, and they'll be happy with that. Whereas for others, if you say, for example, halal, then they expect, first of all, the hotel has to be dry, no non-halal activities to be part of the hotel, and they're very, very strict in terms of what that means. Um, one company that does a good job of helping you identify what different hotels provide is Halal Booking. So if
Okay.
you go on halalbooking.com and you do a search, you're able to search for the destination that you're considering to travel to. You're able to search by the specifics of what halal means. So, for example, you're able to search by if they have some halal food options, or all of the halal all of the food in the hotel is halal. Or, for example, if they have separate swimming pools for women, or if they have a spa that's separate for men and women. So things like that. Um, so that's a very helpful service for someone looking for a hotel, and being able to find something that meets their needs and what they are comfortable with in terms of how far it accommodates their needs as Muslims.
That's very interesting. Halal bookings .com. I mean, I kind of like travel not that much, but when I travel, I usually stick to fruits
Oh,
most of the time. Yeah, I
that's
mean,
very
yeah,
restrictive.
it's a little bit of I don't know. I usually travel for shorter periods, so
Yeah.
and it gets with my diet. So,
But I
but
mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
when you're traveling for leisure, food is part of it. Like food is part of the experience. It's part of the enjoyment. And some people are foodies. So
Mm,
I feel it's not a matter of, oh, I just need to eat to so I survive. It's more of an enjoyment.
I, I I get you. I
Yeah,
get
I
you. I
want to
mean,
try the local cuisine, uh, but I want to make sure I can actually
yeah,
taste
yeah, yeah. I mean,
halal.
and even the thing is, like, if you lose trust with a certain provider, it is very hard to especially in this area. I remember seeing, especially I like sweets, so I thought sweets are safe, and then I realized that I have to research and see like so yeah, I get it. And let me jump to a very close point. I We talk a lot about food, although we're talking about halal travel. So how the dynamics work between the different sectors within the halal tourism, let's say. It's very related, and I want to know how you like experts team up. How does it? If you can shed any light on the way things go when it comes to the relationship between them.
Sure. So number one is food for absolutely in terms of when you talk about halal travel or Muslim friendly travel, then food goes hand in hand with that because you can't have a halal travel destination or a halal travel um, a trip, for example, a program without the food being halal. So that's the number one that comes into mind. But then there are other sectors that you might not automatically think of as relevant to halal travel, but they can be. But let me first share with you the sectors that we usually cover when we talk about. So we talk about the Islamic economy, and there are certain sectors related to Muslim lifestyle, like how you live your life. And so there are 7 sectors that we usually cover. So travel is one of them, and then and food is one of them. We also cover Islamic finance. We cover Muslim friendly media. We cover Muslim modest fashion. We cover halal pharma, halal cosmetics. So these are the different sectors that we talk about when we discuss the Islamic economy. And so in addition to food, which relevant, and if you really get technical, then for example, a hotel offering toiletries, having toiletries in the hotel room, these need to have halal ingredients, so not include pork, for example, and or alcohol. And the step further would be for them to be halal certified. But that's really going, and there are hotels that provide that. More in Malaysia, for example. Um, another industry that's maybe not directly related, but a lot of times the modest fashion industry teams up with tourism. So, for example, having a modest fashion week that
Okay.
and there are different destinations that provide that, and that is a tourism attraction because you're attracting tourists, Muslim tourists, to come enjoy the destination and participate in that event. So that can be a joint project that is the 2 sectors are involved in. Um,
Mm.
Another sector is, for example, is Islamic finance. If you need to finance your trip or you need uh, any type of insurance, so it's more
Mm.
careful
Mm.
insurance.
The cover, okay.
Um, the financing is halal. There's no riba involved.
Mm.
so things like that, and that's how different sectors are related.
I see. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it makes sense now when you say it. Like when you talked about the fashion weeks and all, I seen recently stuff like that happening, especially in GCC. Uh, this combination between the tourism and these kind of modest fashion, it makes sense. Uh, Now I wanna go a little bit. You mentioned that. It's still not that there's not that much of a focus in some countries, at least in this sector. um, I want to go to the size of the market. Is it that like what's stopping them? Is it the size of the market? Is it the possibilities or potentials of growth?
Yeah,
uh,
I think it's more lack of awareness. But let me first share the size, because the size is substantial. Like in the State of the Global Islamic Economy report, which we published, the 2022 report, which we published last year, we estimate the spend of Muslim travelers to be $102 billion.
wow.
And that's their spend in 2021. Obviously, it dropped the previous year. It dropped because of COVID, but in 2021, it came back almost to pre-COVID levels. So it's definitely the spend is substantial. That represents about 11% of the global traveler spend. So it's definitely substantial enough to target Muslim travelers as a segment. I think it's more lack of awareness. But some destinations are doing quite well. In our report, we have it includes an Islamic economy indicator, and for Muslim travel, we rank countries in terms of not just how well they're currently doing or just by the number of Muslim tourists visiting, but also by their ecosystem, and how much they support the industry, and it's looking at how they're doing right now, and what support they have to even grow further. So the top three are Malaysia, which is not surprising as a top first. The second one is Singapore, which is a non-Muslim country.
Okay, that's
And
surprising.
yeah, and then because it has a lot of Muslim neighbors, and it wants to attract its neighbor by Malaysia and Indonesia. And then number three is Turkey, and of course
Okay.
Turkey is not surprising
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
It has a lot in terms of what it's offering Muslim travelers. But that's in terms of these are the top in the travel indicator.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not surprised with Turkey and Malaysia, but Singapore, very interesting. Just it's very, very interesting. Uh, Let me like apart from awareness, like the challenges overall for countries and even organizations like hotels and individual organizations. Apart from like, is there's anything that maybe can be stopping them a little bit, or is it the investment that they have to go through?
Actually, on the contrary, I think really it boils down to number one is the awareness, not realizing the full economic potential of the Muslim travel segment. That's number one. Then number two is if they do realize it, or they have an indication of that this, yes, it's an attractive segment and we should be doing something, they assume that addressing the needs of Muslims is difficult and it requires deep knowledge or requires substantial investment. So that's another misconception.
Mm.
And then sometimes it's just a matter of not really willing to learn. And I'm talking about, like, I'm here in the US, so for example, not really being aware of the needs of Muslims and not really trying to learn what is required, just assuming that is you will need to totally revamp your hotel, for example.
Mhm. I see.
But
So it's the misconception of
it's a
that.
misconception. I think for someone traveling to a non-Muslim country or a country in the West, just feeling that you are acknowledged as a Muslim with all of the environment of Islamophobia and misconceptions about Islam and about Muslims, just someone coming up to you at the hotel or when you're asking in the hotel and just telling you, oh, by the way, if you're looking for a good halal restaurant, there's a restaurant close by. So just sometimes it's just a matter of training the staff on what basic Muslim needs are, giving them sort of a cheat sheet if they don't, if the hotel doesn't provide anything that's in terms of cater to Muslim guests, but being able to point out where they can go for Jummah, for example. Where's the closest mosque? When I went to Spain a few years ago, southern Spain, the Andalusia region, and at the hotel they didn't provide. Actually, they provided a few halal food options as part of the buffet, which they marked clearly. And then when I first checked in, they gave me a sheet of paper that listed some of the halal restaurants that were close by, the masjid, and things like that. And that goes a long way, when you're visiting a country in Europe and you hear about all of the Islamophobia and negative sentiments towards Muslims. Something like that just goes a really long way towards making you feel welcomed, feel comfortable.
Definitely. I can imagine. I mean, especially when it comes like when the staff itself, they're part of the culture of accepting, the Muslim travelers, because they are you might not interact with the management, but you will interact with the people. I think it's very important.
Yes.
Especially with the staff.
One more thing I should add is also a misconception, and I'll take a hotel again as an example, is feeling that if they're accommodating Muslim needs, then they're excluding non-Muslims. And I'm referring here to hotels in Muslim majority countries. So, for example, if there's a hotel in Turkey or in Egypt that has that accommodates all of the Muslim needs and is not afraid of announcing that they have halal food and that they have prayer spaces or anything related to Muslim needs, but that's not targeting Muslims exclusive of others. You can target multiple segments. Your background is in marketing, and you know that you can target multiple segments, and sometimes even non-Muslims traveling as families, they would feel more comfortable in a hotel that is dry, that doesn't have a nightclub or a casino, that it's more family oriented. So absolutely, it is not. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, to that point, I think it might be some entry point for even other non-Muslim customers, the family part, maybe some other options like sanitation, these kind of things. I think it will create a great option. I mean, I can imagine families would want more, a lot of Muslim friendly stuff.
Yes, absolutely. They don't want their kids to be exposed to people coming out from the bars and being intoxicated and not behaving in a proper way. So absolutely, yes.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's I want to go back to the point when you mentioned the market size. So obviously the whole travel industry was affected with the pandemic and all, especially at the surge of that. So did the early adapters, maybe who the early adopters of halal travel and Muslim friendly travel, did they get any benefit from that when it comes to the pandemic, like the way they act, the way the the first responses from them, because they are more prepared for such scenarios, maybe dissertation, these kind of things. Did it make any
Yeah,
difference?
unfortunately,
Yeah,
no. Like,
yeah.
because
Mm,
halal travel and Muslim friendly travel, it's really part of, it's a segment
mm,
within the global travel sector. So it was equally affected.
mm,
It
mm.
was absolutely equally affected. Um, Spending dropped. So Muslim traveler spend dropped by 70% in 2020 during
Oh,
COVID. So it was absolutely affected. I think the companies that did well, that managed to um, to diversify or think of other offerings that they can provide, those are the ones that were able to do well or even survive.
mm, mm.
Um, and a few examples are, for example, so Air Asia, which is the Malaysia airline, they they launched an e-commerce platform. And by the way, it's a Muslim friendly. It's called Ikhlas, and that
Okay,
was a way to,
interesting.
yeah, to diversify their business. They also got into food delivery in the region. A lot of travel companies, well, not a lot, but there are a few examples of large travel companies, online especially, that diversified into food, because food is it was a common need, and food
Yeah.
delivery, the need for food delivery grew. So Traveloka, which is based in Indonesia, they started offering food delivery. And it was initially, they had launched their Traveloka Eats a few years before the pandemic, but it was just a restaurant directory.
Hmm.
But during the pandemic, they expanded, and they were delivering food basically.
Hmm.
And others also, there's a company in Pakistan that got into grocery delivery. Some airlines, they pivoted and started delivering cargo during the pandemic. Um, some hotels, they started offering, you can book a room for the day to work, people who are working from home, and if you wanted to get away, if you had your kids at home and it was just too noisy, you're not able to focus, and you wanted to get away, you can book a room for the day, and you have Wi-Fi and free coffee, for example. Um, so these are some examples, and I feel that the pandemic was a wake-up call to the travel industry. You know how the travel industry is the number one industry affected by any crisis. So whether it's the pandemic, or a natural disaster, or conflicts, or weather weather related happenings. So it's the first to be affected. So it's a learning, I feel, for companies to consider, what if something happens? What can we offer that we already have? That we already have the infrastructure or the know-how to offer. So, for example, Air Canada started streaming. You know how airlines have their media streaming
Hmm.
that they do for their trips. They started offering their streaming services to consumers. So that's,
The entertainment system in their
yeah, they started offering
interesting.
that. So you think of what do you have? Some hotels started offering like laundry services, for example, or also food delivery services. Um, so you think of what you have in terms of infrastructure that you can uh, offer or provide, pivot to other services that are not reliant on travelers, especially overseas travelers.
Yeah, I think once you understand your marketing strength and your value proposition as a whole, you'll be able to see the path, especially in these tough moments. And like you said, the I think because it's a little bit it's kind of luxurious, the travel industry. I mean, somehow, so that's why it's one of the things that first get affected with such whenever your pocket is going empty. So this is
Yeah,
one of the
but you know what's interesting is, yes, we consider as it's like it's not a need. It's not a need to travel. A lot of times it's more of a, you're traveling for leisure. It's more of a like a way to have some, enjoy a break and so on. But during the pandemic, most people couldn't travel because they were not allowed to. A lot of you know how a lot of countries had lockdown, or they had extended quarantine
periods. Yeah,
periods, and then after the pandemic, they were saying there was a lot of people called it revenge travel, where all of the
yeah,
pent up demand, and even though, you know, right now we're hearing about like economic contraction. Is there going to be a recession or some sort of contraction? And prices of air tickets, for example, and just the price of travel is higher, but still the demand is quite high because people realize that they do need to travel. It's not a matter, you can't just stay put and not
yeah,
travel. Although during the pandemic, domestic travel increased, especially countries like here in the US,
yeah,
it's so
bigger
large,
company.
and people realized, well, we can go and visit another state and just drive and have a totally different experience, and maybe rent an Airbnb that's unique, and maybe get together with family members. So travel definitely changed because of the pandemic, and some of these changes will stay on after.
Yeah, I was checking the some ticket prices a few days ago, and yeah, it's the prices are ridiculous, but we still had to book. So
Yes,
yeah,
you need to travel. People who
yeah,
need to go visit family, you know, diaspora who live
mm,
in different countries, and need to go back to visit family, or it's just sometimes it's just a
mm,
need, or you need to
yeah.
take a vacation.
Yeah, I mean, if I think if it was not allowed in a lot of countries, it would have stayed. You know, I mean, the 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 fact that people are worried for their life because of the pandemic, it's something, and the fact that they had to stay because of the authorities stopped them, that's another thing. So
Yeah,
there would have been still people that they wouldn't care that much and would still take their chances at trouble. I get that. I get that.
absolutely, absolutely.
All right. So before we wrap up, I want to talk about the future. Since we talked about the past, let's talk about the future. And I mean, who do you think would be the winner and the leader, and what will it take for them? You know, if you don't want to mention countries because you're not sure or so, but what does it take in this industry to be the leader and be able to uh, to stay there for as long as you can?
So if we're talking about how to get there, how to be a leader in Muslim-friendly travel, first of all, you have to be a destination that people want to go to, regardless of having their Muslim needs met. Like, it's not, when you think of a vacation, you're not just thinking, oh, I want to eat halal, I want to have. You're thinking, oh, I want to travel
Mm,
I want to go to a nice beach, or I want to have an adventure trip, or I want something that's family friendly because I have little kids, or I want to go to a retreat, or I want to go to a resort. So in the end, travel is travel. People, even Muslims, want to travel for the sake of what the destination has to offer. So it's always, I feel destinations have to be always on top of the needs of traveler, needs and changing trends. Uh, like I was just reading the other day about how um, there's there's an increase in uh, the older segment of travelers that most destinations are not catering to at all. So the 60 plus
Mhm.
traveler, that of course they have different needs, and you have to accommodate, for example, if they have health related issues,
Mm.
and they're a lucrative segment that a lot of destinations are not catering to. So you have to be on top of what are the trends, um, that are going on, what are the needs. For example, as a result of the pandemic, people started traveling for a longer duration, and
Mm.
and preferring slower travel. So uh, you know how before the pandemic it was quite common to have trips where you go to Europe and you go to France for 2 days, and then Belgium, and then Holland, and you're visiting several. You're
Yeah,
just you have a
especially
bucket
in
list
Europe.
you're ticking
Yeah,
off.
yeah, yeah.
But I think as a result of the pandemic, people got to experience slower travel, going not necessarily to cities, but destinations that were less crowded, um, taking it, enjoying the, renting, like I mentioned, and an Airbnb, or and just enjoying the place and taking it a little bit more relaxed. So I feel that's a trend that people need to pay attention to. So in general, I would say um, focus on what your destination has to offer. Be aware of changing trends. Look at future trends. You know, some of our work involves looking at what societies will look at 50 years from now, for example,
Mm.
with very different needs.
Mm.
Like, for
Mm.
example, we're seeing now glimpses of. Um, I came across that now in Dubai there will be flying taxis, for example,
Yeah.
with AI and Chat GPT and things like that. You're seeing
Mm.
glimpses of what 10 years from now the future can be very different. So you need to be looking ahead and be engaged in research or
Mm.
uh,
I think it's safe to say you be a good in marketing. You have a good product, but you also have to be good in marketing when it comes to marketing it and understanding also
absolutely.
your potentials.
Absolutely. Marketing is a must for any destination, right? Right now and always, and be able to communicate what you have, your strengths, and be able to reach your target market and have a story and all of that. And you're a marketer, you know all of these.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to wrap, but since you mentioned the generation and the age and all, I wanted to understand if how the younger generation, um, at least at the moment, comes into the equation when it comes to halal travel, uh, especially obviously for Muslim travelers, and on the other hand, maybe uh, as an option because it's a cultural thing. So I would assume, I don't want to assume, but I would assume non-Muslims, maybe the elder generation uh, would be more might be more interested in such travel, but or is it purely for Muslim travelers? You think there's some entry points that can be, and I know there's a lot of points here, but one is I got carried away. So one is the younger generation or the at the moment the younger generation or the elder generation, and second thing is there's any other like entry points for non-Muslims to be interested in such cultural segment, or it will be purely for Muslims?
So let me answer your first part of your question in terms of, so the younger generation, I feel they are more. Of course, it's different and different. different countries or different regions, it's different. But in general, um, they are more intentional in the way they travel. They want an authentic experience. They don't want to be just tourists. They want an immersive experience that is real, that they get to experience the country or the destination, um, and feel what it is like, have a local experience. They want to discover by themselves, not necessarily, not travel with a with a travel company with an itinerary, and have something very structured. They want to go and discover by themselves. Um, in terms of here or in the West, there's some initiatives to take. There's a company, for example, in the UK called Andalusian Routes. A few years ago, they started um, taking groups of youth from the UK and traveling, taking them on trips to Spain that were both educational as well as a fun leisure trip, where they would learn about the history of Muslims in Spain, and it would help them understand their identity as Muslims in the West, and where they fit in all of this. And it was such an enriching program. So there are different, really different kinds of travel options for the young travelers, but most of top of which would be to have like a genuine, authentic experience. A lot of them are conscious about sustainability, so in terms of uh, not having a negative impact on the environment. Although all travel, if you're traveling by plane, that's there's the carbon emissions, there's no way around it. But in terms of, for example, the destinations that they go to, that the locals are not exploited, that if it's something related to wildlife, that animals are treated humanely, so things like that. And the other part of your question, I think you'll need to repeat. I forgot.
Yeah, I mean, you actually kind of answered it, because the other part was about how can the Muslims is it like there can be some entry points for non-Muslims, or is it purely the focus? And I see there's a combination. But I don't know if I get that right from the first part.
So in terms of for non-Muslims targeting Muslims, I feel like you said, a lot of times it is more cultural. So if they are targeting travelers from the GCC, for example, it's a combination of accommodating their needs as a cultural group. So, for example, uh, eh, they might travel as a family, and it's large families, for example, and maybe in the hotel they want connected rooms, for example, and that's not related to their Muslim needs, but also in addition they will cater to their needs as Muslims.
What I
Um,
meant is the vice versa. It's like something like what happened in the World Cup in Qatar. So
yeah,
yeah, so people might be
uh,
there might be some entry points that
for non-Muslims to
yeah.
get interested into Muslim-friendly travel, I would say an entry point could be heritage-related trips.
Okay,
So,
okay.
if you're talking about you're looking at Islamic heritage and as a way to understand Islam. So Spain, again, there's so much Alhambra Mosque, there's so much Islamic heritage in Spain. And instead of just looking at it um, and just explaining the history, but maybe explain a little bit about Islam and about Muslims, and that's an entryway. Also, in terms of like halal food, if halal food needs to be, and that's a conversation that the halal food sector has, but it needs to be not just halal and zabiha halal, but tayyib. So tayyib in terms of being pure and organic. And if if that becomes the case, then non-Muslims would want to eat something that's certified as really pure and good for you and to eat, for example. And here in the US, halal food is quite popular in some cities, like in New York, for example, with the halal guys, and it's a popular food. So there are absolutely different entries. For example, in terms of having like more modest or separate areas for men and women. Some women just feel more comfortable in a, like they want to work out. If it's a gym, for example, they want to work out in a women-only gym, for example. I was wearing one time at a hotel in a swimming pool at a hotel here in the US. I was wearing my fully covered bathing suit, and I had an American non-Muslim woman come and ask me where I bought it from, and she was like, I would prefer to be covered, and then it protects you from the sun. And so it's absolutely, most of the offerings, they're not just for Muslims. I'm glad you asked that question. We shouldn't just be purely pigeonholed and focused on, oh, we're just targeting to Muslims. A lot of our Muslim values, they are really universal. So when you're talking about clean food, when you're talking about modesty, when you're talking about being family friendly, so absolutely, I think that's a great perspective to have, for sure.
And I think the World Cup in particular, there's a lot of lessons from there. I've seen a lot of people, these women who are happy with the women only lines. We're happy with that. Another woman will have to do the surge, the body surge, all these kind of things. So I think for this, and I'm sure the halal travel industry was very involved in the World Cup. I'm sure about that. But also I think there's more to be learned from that actual thing that happened, a few months ago.
Qatar did an amazing job. It did an amazing job of being inclusive and open. And I saw, like, unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to go, but I saw, for example, like the masalla areas, they were glass. It's like, let's be open and help and introduce our beautiful religion to others in the world, and just show them what it is, and there are many features of it that they would want to participate in.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, the example that I remember, once I was in the Netherlands, and I noticed that most of the houses, at night they keep the light on, and they don't put the curtains. So I asked a friend over there, and he was like, they want to show that they have nothing to hide. You can see, I mean, obviously this is their house, but I did
that's interesting.
I think it's related to some medieval thing that used to happen. So they want to make sure that okay, nothing is happening, everything is you can see everything, obviously.
That's interesting.
I think I'm very thankful for your time. I know that you had to schedule a lot of things to be able to make it. Really thank you for your knowledge, for the conversation, and even for the at least giving us a chance to understand the topic more and shed light and knowledge on this. Wish you success, like all the success personally, and also as Dinar Standard. really appreciate your time. طبعا الناس ما شفتوا المجال المسلم فريندلي ترافل، يعني مش فقط لنا نحن كمسلمين مهم، ولكن ايضا له فائده اقتصاديه في الاقتصاد ومميزات. هو مجال يعني ربحي، وله فوائد كثيره في موجود في الاقتصاد، سواء المؤسسات او البلدان او الافراد المشاريع والى اخره. فاتمنى تكون الحلقه عجبتكم، واذا عجبتكم اشتركوا في القناه، ونلقاكم ان شاء الله في حلقات اخرى على مشيئه الله ان شاء الله سبحانه وتعالى. السلام عليكم ورحمه الله تعالى.